Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. So welcome to my September wrap up. September was a month for me. A lot happened. I was in a slump. My life was completely taken over by a Karen Slaughter series. I basically abandoned my TBR plans. I didn't read anything that I wanted to read, but I have a lot of interesting things to tell you about in this video. So many books that I was not expecting to pick up that I did. So I'm really excited to tell you guys about all of these little surprises. Oh, also I am filming in a different mode. I'm like filming differently basically. I think this like setup looks a little bit lighter and brighter in the camera. Maybe that's just on my end. Tell me if this looks noticeably better or if you can't tell a difference at all. I really want to know in the comments if you like this better or if you think my regular camera situation is fine. Either way, just let me know. Obviously, I want to make these videos the highest quality I can for you guys. But jumping into the books, let's go ahead and get into some stats. And as always, these are generated from Storygraph. You can follow me on Storygraph. I have the link down below. This month, I read 14 books with a total 4,273 pages. Here is the mood breakdown, and it is not varied at all. I don't think I've ever had like this solid of a pie chart before. Usually it's like a bunch of little teeny tiny moods, but in September, I was in a very mysterious and dark mood. Like almost 3/4 of the books that I read were mysterious and dark in some way. And my pacing graph actually looks very different than it usually does. I usually just read fast-paced books, but we have quite a few medium and a couple slow in there as well this month. And as for page number, I read 11 books that fell in that sweet spot, the 300 to 500 page range. And then I had 3 books that were shorter than 300 pages. I read all fiction this month, as always. And here is the genre breakdown. Again, like not varied at all. So many mystery thrillers, so much romance. It's all contemporary. We know how it goes. As for my star ratings, I had an average rating in September of a 4.05, which I consider to be a really great overall rating for the month. I actually only had 1 2-star and 1 2.5-star book. Then I had 6 4-stars, 3 4.5s, 1 4.75, and 2 5-star books. So it was a lot of having a good time while I'm reading, like genuinely enjoying the books that I was reading, but not getting a lot of that like 5-star feeling. And the turning point, the absolute turning point of this month, when I got myself out of the slump of just reading books that I just enjoyed, was when I read one particular 5-star book that I read this month. And now I'm back like on my reading train where I'm gonna read 20 books in October because I'm already on my second one and it's October 3rd. And here is my page breakdown for like how I read the pages throughout the month. As you can see, there were 2 really long books that I read right in the middle of the month. So from the 11th to the 21st, 10 days, about a third of the month, I was just reading 2 books. They were really long and they were really heavy. So it makes sense why I would need to dedicate a lot more time to those books than I usually would. That's it for Storygraph stats. As for just a few other ones that I like to give every month, the mode that I read these books in was I read 2 of them via audiobooks, 3 of them by an ebook on my phone, and I read 9 physically. As for the age breakdown, I read 4 YA books and 10 adult. And finally, for the author stats, I only read 1 book this month by a male author. The rest of the 13 were all female authors. And I also only read 2 books by authors of color. The rest of the 12 were all white authors. And I read from mostly white women because I was reading series a lot this month, which, y'all, that's crazy. I literally read more books from a series in September that I read standalone. Can you imagine? Did you ever think I would say those words to you in a wrap up? Like, I never read from series. I can't remember the last time I read a book from a series, but I read 4 series and a prequel this month, which is just crazy. So yeah, that's why the author stats are not very varied and have a lot of variety in there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and give you what you came for. Let's get into the ratings and reviews that I have of all the 14 books I read in September. Like I do every month, I'll go ahead and start off with my lowest rated book, and we will work our way up to my highest rated book. So the 1 2-star book that I read this month was The Twin by Natasha Preston. And the more that I think about this book, the more I really want to give it 1 fucking star, I have to be honest. But there was a good chunk of this book that I did enjoy, so I'm gonna keep it at a 2-star, but just know that my frustration level with this book makes me want to give it like a petty 1 star. But before I get too far into my thoughts, let me tell you what this book is about. The Twin follows 2 twins who recently lost their mother. Their mother had a tragic accident and passed away, and one twin was living with the mother and the other twin was living with the father. The parents were divorced. And so it was going to be a big adjustment for both of them to obviously adjust to living with each other. They have never lived with each other before, while they're processing the grief of losing their mom. So the one twin that we're following that had lived with her dad for a long time, she's established in this community at her school. She has a friend group. She's our main character. That is the perspective that we're following, and it's the only perspective that we follow. And at first, she is really just trying to work through her grief, help her sister adjust, and get back into a routine where she's feeling the support from her friends, her boyfriend, her therapist, her dad. She has this big support network around her. But throughout the book, she starts to become paranoid that her twin sister is taking her life from her and actually picking off those support systems and stealing them for herself. And of course, everyone in her life is telling her, no, your sister's not doing that. You're just paranoid. Like, you guys can share your relationship with your dad and your friends and everyone else. So just chill out. And our main character gets increasingly paranoid, where we start to question, is she crazy? Is this all in her head? Or is this actually like a devious plot by her sister to take over her life? And I actually loved this concept for a thriller. I love twins and sibling relationships in thrillers a lot. I think it's so interesting. However, the ending, you guys, oh my God. I had so much rage in my body at the end of this book. I can't even express to you without getting like really heated how much the ending of this book severely upset me. We know. I have mixed opinions on YA thrillers. A lot of the times they just don't do the trick for me. And I definitely have a very varied history with Natasha Preston. I've given a lot of her books 4 stars, but I've also given a lot of her books 1 and 2 stars. So she's really just a hit or miss author for me. And YA thrillers are hit or miss for me in general. But this one, I was really confident I was going to give it like a 3.5 or a 4 star for most of the book. I think the tension and the paranoia, the like questioning, is she crazy, is she not, kind of feeling was very effective, very thrilling. It kept me turning pages. It kept me invested in the story. I was very thrilled and like ready to go on this ride, but then it just stayed right here. And we never had any kind of resolution. The end is kind of just like, well, wasn't that fun? Who knows? Who knows how it ends?
Not me, not the ending of this book that like you were supposed to know and like get some closure.
And I think that is my biggest qualm that I'm finding. I have a lot to complain about with Natasha Preston's thrillers. I don't feel any closure when I read them. Like, I really want to know what happens at the end, and then it just cuts off. And I want to know, like, what happened? Natasha, can you please work on writing some epilogues? Like, if you just came back and wrote an epilogue for every single one of your books you've ever written, I think I would give them all, like, at least 3 stars. But this ending, the way that it cut off so abruptly when I was so invested in knowing the truth, I can't forgive that. The 2.5 star book that I read this month was Before She Knew Him by Peter Swanson. And, okay, this one is hard for me because I think it was a very enjoyable thriller. I think it takes you on a nice ride. I think it is thrilling. The twists are unpredictable. And it had a lot of just like great atmospheric scenes where the writing was really effective and I could like picture what was happening like a movie in my head. The imagery was great. The atmosphere was there. So I had trouble rating it a 2.5 as low as I did. But the reason why I did that was because of the mental health rep in this book. This book is following our main character, Hen, and she moves into a new neighborhood with her husband. They're kind of trying to start afresh, but Hen has some reservations about their neighbors. They go meet their neighbors and have this like introductory dinner, get to know each other, and Hen thinks that one of the pieces of memorabilia sitting on the husband's bookshelf in his office is actually part of a true crime, like active investigation. Basically, she thinks this husband is a murderer and that one of his trophies is literally sitting out there, and she's like, no, listen, bitch, I've heard of this case and I'm gonna take you down. So she starts telling her husband, and it's really hard for him to trust her because she does have bipolar disorder, and I guess that makes it hard for him to trust her. Like, this is where I am hung up on this book because I like that the book is saying she's right. Like, her husband is wrong for not trusting her just because she has bipolar disorder. And just because somebody has some type of psychological disorder doesn't mean that everything that they say can just be chalked up to their illness, and we shouldn't listen to them, and they can never have these like crazy ideas or outlandish things can't happen to them. You know, it is validating in that sense, but I just don't think it was doing anything revolutionary, if you know what I mean. I feel like just the presence of bipolar disorder within a thriller setting is not the type of representation we need for psychological disorders. If our main character just happened to have bipolar disorder and it wasn't a part of the plot, it was just something that we saw her deal with as she was trying to solve this case, I think that would have made the story a lot more empathetic, a lot more interesting, and have a lot more positive representation than using it as like a pathological part of the story and this murder plot. Any type of tying crime, murder, or things with a negative connotation to a psychological disorder, no matter how accurate the representation is, I just don't like. I can't support it. Being a therapist, I don't like that. So yeah, 2.5. Now let's move on to all of my 4-star books. I had so many of them this month. First up, let's start with the series that took over my life.
Karen
Slaughter knows how to freaking write a thriller. I will tell you that much. I am working my way through her Grant County series, and I read 2 absolute chunks of this series this month. These are the 2 like slow, big chunky books that I read for like a third of the month, and they were really hard to get through. I gotta be honest, they were hard to get through because of the content. It's really hard to disturb me. I am an avid thriller reader. It's my favorite genre, and this imagery and the descriptions of these events in the books were just so graphic and so disturbing. It was really difficult for me to read, and this is coming from somebody who at the age of like 11 used to watch horror movies alone in a dark room and thought it was fun. So if I'm disturbed by like the gore and the level of graphicness in these thrillers, then just be forewarned and know that there are a lot of trigger warnings for these books. But with all that being said, the first book in the Grant County series that I picked up this month was Kiss Cut. And this follows the investigation of a case outside of a roller rink. There was this gun standoff where this girl was threatening to kill this boy. It was some kind of relationship kind of dispute, and then the police surround them, and it's kind of like a shoot off. And I'm not gonna say obviously what happened because it's part of the like shocking twist at the beginning of the story. Basically somebody dies and somebody lives, and based on that, the investigators are trying to find out what happened, but along the way, more people keep dying. So they know that like there's some kind of structural something going on where it's going all the way up to the top. And that's where Karen Slaughter is best at. And she does it in a way that feels really, really realistic. And that's part of why it's so disturbing, but it's also why I like her books better than books like The Brightlands, When No One Is Watching, you know, books like that where it's like, whoa, it's a conspiracy, it goes all the way up to the top. Those just don't feel like realistic, and these feel sinister and graphic in a way that feels real, which is why I enjoy Karen Slaughter's writing so much. However, these did get really intense for me, and it did make it hard for me to read at some times, especially the graphic descriptions around children and teenagers. It was just a little bit hard. Harder than normal to get through, this one in particular. And because of the investigator perspective, it's slower paced. You're not like in the action, you're looking at the aftermath. So it just depends. I gave it a 4-star. I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was a great example of like stellar thriller writing, but emotionally, it was a tough one. And then following that, I read A Faint Cold Fear, which is the third book in the Grant County series. This one follows a string of suicides that are happening at the local college, and they're looking into the fact that maybe these suicides are not suicides after all, that somebody is staging these things and killing off college students for some reason. So the investigators try to find out why. This one was a touch easier to stomach compared to Kiss Cut. Kind of the same situation here. Obviously, I gave them the same rating. They're both 4-star books. I enjoyed them a lot. Same criticisms for this one, though. It was a little bit slower paced. But since I am so invested in the characters at this point, this series all follows like the same investigators and same people in the same town. I was a little bit more willing to flip pages in this one because I am getting really, really attached to these characters. I know them. I know their personalities, especially one of our main perspectives. She's the town doctor and medical examiner for all the cases. I absolutely love her perspective. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the series, and I'm about to finish the 4th book. So I'll keep you posted. The next 4-star book that I picked up in the month of September was Finlay, Donovan is Killing It by El Casamano. And this one was so fun. This is the perfect cozy mystery for fall. It is so great. It is light, it is funny, it is quirky, it has those romantic elements where our main character Finlay here is in a love triangle, so that's a fun element, but it also has like the twisty, intriguing murder mystery aspect as well. If you don't know what this book is about, it follows a single mom and author named Finlay Donovan, and she's really down on her luck. She is in the aftermath of her divorce, fighting for custody of her children, trying to get a book deal, and really struggling. So one day she has a meeting with her literary agent in a Panera, and they're talking about her books. She writes murder mysteries as well. And the lady in the next booth actually misunderstands their conversation and believes that Finlay is a contract killer. So she tries to hire her and pay her $50,000 to take out her husband. And Finlay ends up saying, hey, you know what? I'm down on my luck. I need custody of my kids. Let's do it. And she gets into this whole quirky, funny scenario where she's taking out these guys and trying to get a payday, but she gets wrapped up in something that's a lot bigger than she thinks. So it's a really fun time. I didn't get that 5-star feeling, but I really don't have much bad to say about this book. I really like the quirky characters, and it was a great kind of recovery from these really heavy thrillers. If you're looking for something cozy to read while you like light a pumpkin candle and like have bread baking in the oven, this is perfect. Then I actually got approved for the e-arc of the second book in the Finlay Donovan mystery series. So I read Finlay Donovan Knocks Him Dead, and I also gave this one 4 stars. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you about the plot because it will spoil the plot of the first one, but we just kind of continue the story of what's going on with Finlay, and it was the same kind of vibe. Again, you get to know the characters a little bit better in the series, so I did read that one a little bit quicker than I read this one because I was more invested, but overall, same feeling, same rating, 4 stars. The next 4-star book that I read in the month of September was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I had a really fun time with this one. It's kind of like The One by John Mars, but instead of a thriller, it's a romance, and it follows another single mom who's down on her luck, and she is a statistician. She loves math. She's a total nerd. So when she hears about this app that matches people with your soulmate based on DNA, she is like so into it. She wants to know the stats, and she also wants to find that special someone after her divorce. So she ends up sending in her spit sample and getting a match, and it is not just any match. This is not a bronze 30% match. This isn't even a gold 75% match. This is a titanium 98% match with this man. And it just so happens that her match is the CEO of the company. So it's about their journey, falling in love, figuring out if this match is actually real, and also looking at the statistics and bonding in their little nerdy way. And I just thought this book was so good, so cute, such a great little romance. And the third act, miscommunication, did not annoy me. So if you want to hear like very in-depth thoughts of this book, I have a romance reading vlog coming out in just a few days. So subscribe for that. And I think it was really fun to read this book. I also have a few more books that I'm going to talk about that are coming up in that vlog. So stay tuned. Now let's move on to my 4.5 star books. First up, in that same romance vlog, I read You Lucky Dog by Julia London, and I really enjoyed this one. It's another contemporary romance set in Austin, Texas, where 2 dog owners, they have kind of like a Freaky Friday Parent Trap mix-up situation with their dog walker, where they end up getting the opposite dog, and through that they meet and develop this romance. This one was very intense, very emotional, and I really liked it. This was almost a complete 5-star romance. It did just have a little bit of that like quirky, fluffy factor where it wasn't too deep and I couldn't really see it being a 5-star favorite of all time. A little tad bit forgettable, but again, if you want to hear my full in-depth thoughts, watch the vlog. And the other 4.5 star book I read this September was Freak by Jennifer Hillier. And this follows the aftermath of another book that I read this month, so I'm not going to give away the plot in case you want to read that one. But it was really well done. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Obviously, I loved it. There were just a few nitpicky little plot holes that I actually caught onto, and that is not very much like Jennifer Hillier. So I feel like maybe, I don't know, readers were demanding a sequel to the other book, and she wrote this and she just kind of threw it together. But regardless, I still really enjoyed my time reading this book. Jennifer Hillier is just like Karen Slaughter. Like, she knows how to write a freaking thriller. It's gonna be disturbing, it's gonna be graphic, it's gonna have a ton of trigger warnings, but you're gonna be blown away by the ending. it's a trade-off, I guess. And the 4.75 book that I read this month was actually the book that preceded Freak, which is Creep by Jennifer Hillier. And this one follows a college professor, dark academia vibes, who is having an affair with one of her graduate students. But when she gets engaged to her wonderful fiance, she decides it's time to cut it off with him. And he does not like that at all. He becomes obsessive. He refuses to accept that their relationship has come to an end, and he actually starts following her and stalking her every move. And she starts to think, well, maybe this crazy ass lover of mine could be behind all of the murders of young women that have been happening on campus ever since he became a graduate student here. So she becomes very paranoid, and many twists unfold. I did not see the ending of this book coming at all, and I'm sure that is why people were demanding the sequel, because it was just so crazy. Like, you did not suspect it at all, and all of the character dynamics are so great, especially if you like romantic thrillers. This one had a lot of like romantic suspense elements. The romance was a big part of it, but it definitely took a backseat to the thrills and the mystery of it all. And I think Jennifer Hillier does a really great job of balancing that in all of her books. So yeah, I really freaking loved this. It was so close to being a 5-star book, but when I compare Creep to like Jar of Hearts, I know that's what Jennifer Hillier can do, and this one just didn't give me that 5-star feeling that Jar of Hearts did, so I had to go based on that, give Jar of Hearts 5-star and give this a 4.75. I know it's so picky. Y'all, if you want to take this as a 5-star, round it up, go ahead. I mean, this is an amazing book. I have nothing bad to say about it, so take it with what you will. Finally, let's get into my 2 5-star books that I read this month. First up, we have Blonde Hair, Blue Eyes by Karen Slaughter. This is the prequel to my favorite book of all time, which is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. If you've been around my channel for any amount of time, you know how much I love Pretty Girls. It's required reading for this channel. It is your homework assignment. You must read this book. It is the best thing ever, especially if you like crazy graphic thrillers like I do. And this was the prequel where we're following how the missing sister in Pretty Girls actually got taken. We don't get her perspective at all in Pretty Girls, but we do in the prequel, and I just can't even explain how much I love this book. It made me want to go back and reread Pretty Girls because it just put me in that atmosphere. You cannot recreate that atmosphere. It can't even be recreated in any other Karen Slaughter book except for this one in Pretty Girls. Like, there's just a certain writing style and a way of describing and talking about the characters, the culture in their town, the views around women and rape culture. Like, oh my God, you cannot replicate that feeling anywhere else. And I was immediately put back into that position of reading my favorite book again. When I was reading this, it was just so beautiful in such a haunting way. I cannot recommend it enough, especially if you've already read Pretty Girls. You've got to read this. Like, this is an essential part of the story, and I think it's only like $3.99. Yeah, it's $3.99. This book is $3.99. It is like 100 pages, so I guess that makes sense, but like, I feel like she should be charging more for this because this is a masterpiece. And finally, my last 5-star book. This is the book that got me out of my slump, that gave me that 5-star feeling, and that is Never Never by Colleen Hoover and Taryn Fisher. This is a YA romance with magical realism / mystery thriller elements to it, about a high school couple who wakes up one day and forgets who they are. And they have to kind of trust each other, rebuild that trust really quickly, and try to help each other find out who they were and why they can't remember who they are. I'm not gonna give away any more than that because I think you should go in semi-blind. Just know that this is a super emotional, hard-hitting romance, and all of the fans of Never Never, like myself, who gave it 5 stars immediately and were so invested in the story, begged Colleen and Taryn for another book. So I actually read the sequel as well. And then we all begged for a third book, so they gave us a third book as well, and I also read that one, but I'm not gonna quite give away my ratings for those just yet because Never Never and Never Never Part 2 and Part 3 are all a part of that romance reading vlog coming out in just a couple days. So I'll keep you in suspense for a little bit, but just know it's one of my favorite romance series of all time. Colleen Hoover can do no wrong, and this writing has actually redeemed Taryn Fisher for me a little bit. I've never liked anything that she's written, to be totally honest, but within the context of those Colleen Hoover angsty, emotional characters, her thriller style twist really shined. So, wow. That was a lot of books. Even though I read so much less than I usually read this month, I feel like that was still so much to talk about. So I hope you got a recommendation from this video and you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.